This is Thursday, November 2nd, NLI staff meeting. We're going through what Brennan talks is our marching back through the institutions of cultural production.
Last March.
What?
Last March through the institutions.
The final march, the last one.
Okay. Okay. So the topic, what Brandon is saying is that basically they can't survive turning the mirror. They're really good at baiting into hazard, but they can't survive the reciprocal, which is to put the lens in their face and just say the truth. And Brandon's been spewing in his usual. He's getting very good at this, he's been spewing his tactics. And unfortunately we didn't hit the record button, so now he'll probably be silent. No. Anyway, so I'm trying to we're recording this to try to capture it. So with the conservatives, we gave up hope. Then we had this 2014, 15, 16 ridicule system, right? Which has brought up memes and whatever. And that was pretty successful at least motivating people. We had the clamp down on it by the social media groups. And then we had the FBI clamp down on organized groups. But the problem is that there aren't any, the groups that are actually making some sort of argument can't be clamped down on, right? If you're actually engaging in some sort of rhetorical position, they can't clamp down on it. And what Brandon is saying is just reverse it. Show up with 25 guys and how do you frame it, Brandon? Show up with 25 guys. If they're public officials, they have to.
Yeah, they have to see you most of the time. Otherwise, show up at a meeting where they're gonna show up because they do. Yeah. But this is why they pushed everything to Zoom. They know they're weak to this maneuver. This is why they kept with Zoom, to keep people away from being able to hold them accountable in person. Because in person, it's real. They use the internet, and people use social media as an insulation layer between what's real and what isn't. But at this point, what happens on the internet happens first, and then it happens in real life. Because people are running through the social, can we get away with this socially on social media? And then they're doing it. Otherwise, we wouldn't have gotten away with all this degeneration. It's why you can have an OnlyFans. It's because it happens digitally first, because the consequences of doing it are so watered down that we give it a shot. We can decide that that's a bad idea ahead of time now, because we have the science of decidability, whether or not it'll alter people in a way that they won't be able to resist, because it's obviously can't resist it. It's demonstrable. So if you go in saying the moral thing, they have to say, no, I'd rather the immoral thing with my asymmetry of power so I can keep abusing these people. Or they'll have to call them useless eaters or whatever. It's not like they're not forward about it. We have to steward a competence. I'm barely sure that it exists, but I'm pretty sure it does in enough of a number that we can just take it back from them. But not next generation, not the kids that were raised behind masks. They won't be able to do it. We have to pull them up a hill to get them back to normal. So it has to be the people who know, who can do it in public, who have to plan for it, who can just show up and be the demonstrated example of the most competence in that position. I could go to any position in the United States and tell them 5 things that they could do that are better than what they're doing now by a lot. In less than 5 minutes. That shouldn't exist. There shouldn't be a person who can do that. That's a flaw in your system. It's not working to create optimums.
Well,
Someone,
optimum for most of those positions means those positions go away. So that's terrifying to them. So
Yes.
if you can do that, that's a position that's not required for the existence of our system.
They're going to lose less, meaning if you're coming down as a governor because you're shit at your job, you were voted there because you're the average of the shit people that voted you there. Just step back instead of being brought to trial, because that's where all of this is going. The crimes that took place during the pandemic are they don't have a precedent in history.
that's probably true. Well,
It's
they don't
definitely true.
have any that's, yeah, like that, you know, there are witch scares, right? I mean, you have to go to something absolutely ridiculous to be able to find another example.
Just tell people they want out of this too. This is a clown world for everybody. It's not just.
Well, you know, if you live in the narrative, and you're surrounded with people in the narrative, and you work in an office environment that's saturated with the narrative, you're not, you know, you don't find this among people who work for a living, so to speak.
Sure. Well, I don't think people have time to get to it, Curt. Meaning, you got to sleep. Most people spend an inordinate amount of time thinking about what they're going to eat next. Then comes like who they're going to fuck next. Then comes like what they're going to do for fun next. And then they have to do hygiene and the rest of their life. How much time during the day do they have to find anything that's real?
Mm-hmm.
I'm being dead serious. Plus, you're being distracted by this. Plus, the clown world is doing the clown world thing. Who's looking at reality? This many people. Except our entire group of people. We're the Pareto distribution most tethered to what's real here by a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Because everyone else projects their fantasy for everyone to see. It's not a mystery.
Right. We're just observing and reporting, and they're fantasizing and negotiating
And manipulating.
Mm-hmm. Manipulating is a better word.
So when we go in front of such groups in institutions, since they're surrounded layers and layers by basically people with similar skewed view of reality, how do we convince them of what's coming?
You only got to turn the
Should they
top.
continue down this road, it's going to be, well, I guess
You
we're
only have to
recording this,
turn
I'm
the
not gonna
top
go there.
people. You only have to turn the top people.
Right.
Do you think they understand what's coming? Or are they surrounded by layers and layers of yes man that they have a skewed reality?
The people who are resistant now believe they are insulated from what's coming. That they have done their due diligence in insulating themselves from the horrors to come.
That's why they have bunkers in Wyoming and New Zealand.
Correct. So let's convince them that they have not done their due diligence.
Do you think Ray Dalio? I think Ray Dalio has been more public about what's coming to the best of his ability.
It's true.
There are people who understand enough that conversion is very easy. They need a group of smart people to be like, hey, this is your blind spot right here.
Ray is an, it's kind of hard to say this, but Ray's an ordinary guy in the sense that he came up through the business because he understands people. Right? He's not a guy who went to an elite school and learned financial economics and learned how to manipulate financialization. Right? And he, you know, I don't know if he's always right, but I don't agree with him on East Asia. But I mean,
but he knows something's going on. That's why something's coming. That's why he wrote his latest book.
Yes, that's right.
Books are too slow. You got to write them, publish them, and read them. Like a couple videos will do. People need to
he also
reorient from the bottom.
videos.
The corollary of how fast we have to transition is writ inside of people attempting to transition their gender. This place isn't working for them, so they're trying very extreme things. When there's only one answer, install the law. There's not another answer. And we should be thankful for that. It's one law.
Principles for Dealing with a Changing World Order by Ray Dalio.
Mhm.
Why Nations Succeed and Fail.
In the book somewhere, he wrote about once every 80 years or so, the right and left would pitch against each other. But I think he sees this more through the lens of return to great power competition, not so much of the internal conflicts.
That's right. Well, I mean, but that's true. But there, right? I mean,
case we should end our internal conflict so that we can focus on the external conflicts that are coming. We have an internal conflict, this territory. It should be worked out swiftly. Our way is the way to look it in the face.
well, that's why is it, just to go back to your people have time for it. Why is it that some of us look at these problems, see them coming, and then act to change them, and other people don't? Why is that?
You mean other people that see them?
No, why is it that people don't see them? Don't understand their context they're in? Why is it that some of us end up looking at systems and at the highest, most abstract level and see emergent patterns at scale and see that these things are obvious and not? I mean, it's not like everybody's not like Rudyard and has read like every third book that's in history that's ever been written. Not everybody's Ray Dalio, who's, down there in the fucking weeds of capital flows and trying to figure out, well, where's this market going by studying the history of rises and falls. He's not even, he's not exactly Carol Quigley either, right? Or Francis Fukuyama. He's not even that sophisticated. The interesting point about Ray or people like him or is that he's basically a craftsman who's gone out to the research material and he's confirmed what the intellectuals have discovered. And so it's always better to have people come at a thing from multiple directions. The fact that he's coming to the same conclusion, makes us more comfortable with the people who've come at it from the data, because he's currently seen. I mean, why did we come to these conclusions? Why do we see it happening? I mean, for me, it was just frustration with this.
Well,
go ahead.
I think the answer for the regular folks, I would say, is bread and circus.
The important thing is that the mass of people are coming to it because the living standards in America aren't
tolerable.
They're just not. We don't have living standards here any longer. Everything has essentially doubled or worse in price in the last 3 or 4 years, so that we can support conflicts elsewhere because they want to make a global circus out of this place. The cosmopolitans want to go from city to city, but they're sucking everybody dry.
Or I mean, the
Well,
first
I
place,
thought
not
that
most
part of
people
it-
are too stupid and are feminine. It's just beyond their capacity to understand what the hell is going on, and always has been.
I'll add to that. He's on the same track I'm going with. Is that one? It's like a two-prong approach. The women can blame somebody else, or cognitively feminine. They can blame somebody else if it all falls apart. And then the elites that have this power drive, obviously from the problem, reaction, solution, they can provide their solution, and they can get to blame white men for either inaction or inability to do anything of it. So add that to Martin's comment of that they're basically stupid and incapable, but then they can also blame, and then the elites can take advantage of that situation. I think that's the tri-function we're working against, which is largely just entropy, right?
Well, it just
Disorder,
makes sense. I
entropy.
mean, if what percentage of us have the knowledge, ability, time to look at these things and actually solve them? What percentage of us have the knowledge, ability to observe them? Right. In other words, it's not seeing the patterns that we see. It's not common. So because what you look at, if you look at how people decide, it's based on how you get your decision. All of us make our own goddamn decisions. I mean, stubbornly so, which is beautiful, if you ask me. So we're all stubbornly comfortable making our own decisions by evaluating the criteria, but that's not true for most
That's
people.
how concurrency comes to, is that we stubbornly come to the same decision.
Right. And so what that was beautiful, Bryan. But if you look at it from the population's point of view, what are you supposed to do as a 105 IQ person, 110 IQ, even 115 IQ person? What are you going to do? You're
What
going
you're taught.
to say, what's that?
You're gonna do what you're taught.
You're going to do what people you agree with do. Right? Because that they're doing the thinking for you, at least you think. Right? Because that's the safest option with the least conflict.
Right.
So most of us, we're disagreeable. I'm not afraid of conflict. I'm kind of an addict, right? So conflict is exciting, right? Competition is exciting. For most of us it is. I mean, look at fucking Brandon. I mean, he's like, let me go to war against these people.
Let me warn you, I pick fights that I lose sometimes.
Well, so
Well, that's a big part of the willingness to do that. Fear plays a huge role in this, I think.
yeah, of course it does.
People don't recognize, or they're starting to recognize that if you're scared to lose something, it's already lost to you because your behavior has changed in regard to that thing. You're operating from a point of fear in regard to that thing. And that's the norm for everybody's everything. That's why they don't stand up. That's why they don't speak, because the only defense they have to protect the thing then from that place of where you're scared to lose it is to not be noticed that you have it, is to not be singled out, right? So they can't stand up. They can't stand out. They can't assert because they don't know how to navigate that fear. Nobody teaches their kids how to navigate fear anymore. We protect them from everything that introduces fear. Right. So nobody's learning how to navigate fear. So we have this underlying fear running our entire system that nobody knows how to oppose because they're all scared to lose everything they have. So
I want to tell everybody that standing up or standing aside, standing up or standing aside, those are the decidable options right now. And that's it. Either you can and you can demonstrate you will, or you can't and you will stand aside and afford those who can to do it without undermining them.
You're
relevant. Another option.
You're relevant or you're irrelevant. Doesn't matter what you think and feel. Either you're relevant because you'd stand up, or you're irrelevant because you stand aside. As long as you're not in the way, I suppose I don't care too much.
That makes those who stand in the way very easy to identify. And then you're going to have all those who stand aside being like, get them.
Yeah. We're getting there. All right. The population's fucking freaking out right now. Because the chaos can be felt, right? It's one thing if the chaos is economic and you personally feel it as stress. It's another if it starts being evident in other aspects of the world. And so,
if it was just the economics, forget everything else that's going on. Just economically, the numbers were changing the way they're changing right now. We'd be in a panic. All right, it's not just economics, not by a lot.
You wait till this. They're trying to prevent this thing from escalating, but you wait till oil goes back up to 170, 190, $200 a barrel. And the guys who transport food are like, I can't do this anymore. I can't make it happen on the gasoline costs alone. So, I thought it's wonderful. Actually love living in this sort of working class, rural community, because I get to talk to like normal people again, right? And they have like real normal people problems, right? Like the cost of food matters, right? The cost of food for a family matters like hell. The cost of gasoline matters. The cost of electrical power matters. And I was watching this chick, German chick. She used to be able to go around America, not that long ago, just 10 years ago. You could find a place in rural America where you could buy a house for 75 or 80 or maybe $100,000. Right? You think you can do that today?
Nope.
You can't. I mean, so what's the future for these kids? They're fucked without our help.
You're specifically talking about the Gen Zs.
Yeah, they're without, if we don't help them, their life is.
Yeah, I was just listening to What If His recent video with my daughter.
The
of
mental
all the
illness
person.
one.
Yeah, like the Black Death
Yeah.
of psychology, whatever. And he talks about the Zoomers these days basically brought up in overly sheltered environment, and they can't function without somebody providing for them, telling them what to do. And as a Gen Xer who, started riding buses all over the city when I was like 6 years old, that's just kind of unimaginable to me.
Mm-hmm. I know I lived in a rural town, right? But I mean, I just had a fucking house key on a string around my neck, right? And I had maybe a couple bucks in my pocket and a bicycle right? And I mean, that was life.
Yeah, that's just because we're not looking at it as a trend. Because even those were immense dependencies compared to how humans live in a natural environment, right? I mean, that's the grocery store is closed and the bus is shut down. You're just as you're in the same position as Gen Z is now. So I mean, it's just a trend we've been on for a long time, right? We were just not as deep in the muck of that trend. So
I didn't have the luxury of being raised in the countryside where I have access to hunting rifles.
It doesn't matter. That means that the dependency is inherent to you, but that's what we have to solve for. So I wasn't either. I grew up in the cities.
My father had the rack of guns was just in the bedroom on the wall.
Right. My point is that the trend away from being functional humans is not recent. It's not a dilemma of just this most recent generation. We've been on it for a long time. Just the consequences are getting to the point now. We're getting far enough away where the consequences are unavoidable.
Who was talking about this? Oh God, you would know the name. 70-ish public intellectual that's been writing for the Wall Street Journal for fucking centuries. It seems like centuries. Oh God, I can't pull it up. And then Martin, I want to say. Anyway, listening to him either last night or this morning talk about how the just the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s generations, and how they experienced very different lives. And so, he was talking, I wasn't there for the 50s, right? But I remember the 60s and 70s just fine, and the whole fucking Cold War thing was a constant goddamn terror. You were scared. You thought about it all the time, right? You had to fucking dive under the tables and
duck and cover
if the bomb's going to hit and all that other shit. And we still had the sirens from the world wars, right? That would go off so to set off the alerts. And then I remember the bombings of the Marxist bombings of the late 60s and 70s. I remember the crisis we were in as both the Kennedys were assassinated. I remember the riots, the race riots of the 60s as the communists tried to bring that here. I remember the Vietnam, the oil crisis, especially, because at the time it was one thing, but when it hit the oil crisis, then that was like what we're feeling here, right? With the economics today, because I mean, when gas used to be a quarter, 10 cents to a quarter a gallon, and it went to over $1. It's like I can't afford to go to work anymore for people. So you look
I'm watching some of those the videos recently. The stuff that prompted, what if all his videos, something like that. Like kids complaining about having to work and things like that. And it's like any organism that is expressing or is complaining that it has to put effort into maintaining its own existence is a broken and damaged organism.
well,
and that's the norm for a whole generation.
What happened to? I can't wait till I get a job so I have money.
Money doesn't buy you the things that are of worth anymore.
So that's the conversation I'm trying to drive toward.
It's not a pathway to acquisition anymore. Money is not a pathway to acquisition anymore.
The jobs are also worse in all sorts of ways.
Right. But it's just this overall level of entitlement that your existence is just a given and you should be able to look at it as a given. That's not the case for any creature in nature anywhere. No existence is just a given. It's a trade. You have to answer the question constantly.
Is it for children who are the subjects of parents? I think so.
It's not just a given. You have to put effort into maintaining their existence.
No. I'm saying I'm trying to say, is this a question of infantilized mind?
Right. Oh yeah. Yes. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah. They're not being, they're not moving through that transition from childhood to adulthood where that realization has to switch. Right. Where you start to be responsible for maintaining your own existence.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I was like that when I was young. Even when I became responsible for myself, it was still at best just work I tolerated. I didn't have a job that I loved until this, basically.
Yeah, there's nothing. A lot of the things that we're afforded to chase now that Gen Z would chase, like you had to make a whole career out of it when you were a Gen Xer. All the technology we have, the difference in what we're offered conveniently now versus even when I was a kid in the 90s, it's a stark difference in the convenience.
So we're getting pushed like rat utopia type problems, right, Luke?
Oh yeah. Well, it's not, it's not even about finding a job you enjoy per se, right? I mean, imagine the earthworm complaining that they have to crawl through dirt. Right. I mean, we've got to the point now where our brains are so disconnected from reality, where we're existing in a frame that is in opposition to what it means to be human, to what it means to be a functional animal. So it's not even about happiness. We
want to put duty in there. That's what gives you the meaning you're afforded. We can lean on all the fads. There are people who just go to the gym and lift weights. You should be in a military with other men doing exercises, because why would you be at a gym lifting weights? There's a way to structure time around the time that everyone's already spending doing things less efficiently than they could be, and they could alter those things.
I'm gonna push back a little bit on this sense of entitlement. I think it's also tied into utopia. Maybe there's a little bit of this infantilization of their minds, but I do think in the late 1800s, early 1900s, especially when nuclear technology came about, is that we had huge breakthroughs in energy. We had breakthroughs in food and energy. Or if we go to Curt's evolution of you want mass and you want energy so you can get more mass, we especially Western civilization had tremendous opportunities to afford a commons that would have taken care of largely the needs or necessities for that little earthworm to make it through the earth. Like we've had like golden age vibes were happening, and I think it was seen, much like the same group undermined monarchies and went after those that were high functioning commons and wanted to consume the excess and strategically go about it. So I don't think that their arguments and their pushbacks from a sense of entitlement are necessarily off course for what could have been. I mean, we're complaining today of what could have been from a sense of entitlement. And I do think that our food and our energy could have been a lot easier. We should have stayed on course with nuclear, steam, any of this radiant energy technology. I mean, there's so many amazing technologies to let the desert dwellers come up with oil and gas, and that we just pumped all sorts of money into that to make people that couldn't even build and maintain a civilization have a tremendous amount of wealth and political and military say over the world was idiocy. It was just absolute idiocy. We should have never have done that. Gasoline and oil should have never became a primary economic driver. And it's the same group of people that are behind that stopped electricity and food and all the things that we could have been, the course that could have been.
Okay.
But and I agree with you. You know, I'm certainly not suggesting going back into like living in the woods, right? And you guys have heard me talk about this before, right? You know, we recognize a need to maintain pressure on our bodies. That's why we have gyms. That's why people exercise, so that even though the vast majority of people, at least in the West, require no actual physical strength or physical endurance to get through their day-to-day activities, right? That's not a requirement to maintain existence, because we have all these other systems in place to compensate for that. But we recognize, or we found out that if we don't do that, we deteriorate. Dysfunctions emerge.
Yes.
Right. So we have to maintain that pressure on us. Right. So I agree we should have all those things in place. That doesn't let us escape from the need to keep those pressures on ourselves. We don't get to. What I'm saying is, people complaining that they have to put effort into going to the gym to maintain their physical capacity. Right. It's the same thing, right? That exists no matter what other solutions we put in place. We're always, as a human being, going to have that pressure or have the need to be exposed to that kind of pressure. The same thing is true for our emotional pressures, for our psychological pressures. All of our pressures have to have, or all of our systems, all of our functions have to have that kind of pressure on to maintain just being human. So we don't get to escape.
So how do we? So the way Luke, I'm just trying to. I want to go back to Bryan's, but I want to grab some wisdom out of what you're saying here. When you say pressures, that's correct, but how would the way you modernize? I think the way you modernize, or you turn that into an educational system, is you say we don't insulate children from adversarialism. We train them with adversarialism.
Correct.
Right.
Concentrate on physical fitness first. It matters more.
You get physical fitness, then you get mindfulness, and then you get social comfort, and then you get skills, right? I mean, it's something along.
They're trying to do it backwards now. They're trying to go in from emotion to fix everything that you'd be able to fix if you could do 10 push-ups.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
and if you experience getting punched in the face when you were 6 years old, because you have combat training as part of your education as well, not because you're getting put in combat, because you need to know how to navigate dangerous humans. I mean, it's just people should be learning self-defense at an early age and stuff like that, which means being in physical contact and being forced under the pressure of their assault, right? It's just all of it should be part of the education process, and none of it, we don't need to be doing these things all day, every day in order for the pressure to work. We need to, like this, a lot of stuff I teach. I'm not saying we should be building our houses in the woods and hunting, squirrels for every meal. But you need to know how to do those things in order to be a human. You don't have to do them all the time, but you need to know how to do them. You need to know how to move your body in order to be a human, right? You need to know how to defend yourself from your environment in order to be a human. What we have now is some sort of subhuman thing that's out there.
Well, we've got
effectively wires connected to them, keeping them alive.
Well, people are living a narrative. I mean, that's what religion does. A religion gets you to live in a narrative that's disconnected from reality.
Right.
But by saturation, it forces, you're forced to live in the context of this narrative. Well, it's doing the same thing. There's one, the only thing that's not a narrative is a description, which is what reality really is. So this thing's a utopian narrative, right? It was created by the progressives on the positive side, and it was created by Marxists on the negative side. And it's two sort of religions, both appeal to the magical thinking of people wanting to be free of stresses. Now, it's one thing to make people free of stresses because they have confidence in handling stresses, psychological, emotional, physical, and economic, and social, and political. And it's another to say that you don't need to be able to react to these things. And what they're doing is they're infantilizing people by saying you don't need to be able to react to these things. We can make them go away. We can pretend they don't exist, because that's what religions do. They pretend they don't exist.
I'll chime in with Luke. There's an internal pressure that comes about. We find in the nutrition and detox work that I've been doing, is that as folks get healthier, they actually want to exercise. They want to play a sport. They actually have more energy. They sleep better, and some of that comes back. Whereas before, we like to say toxicity begets toxicity. So if they're eating a crap diet, they're feeling like crap. Some way how it affects the gut biome, so that the little microorganisms want more of the sugar to feed them so they can reproduce in their gut biome. This type of stuff, just toxicity begets more toxicity. So as we go through the detoxing stages, people get more energy, and then when they get more energy, they want to do something with it. So I just want to chime in, it's not all external pressure. There's an internal motivation that comes about as people get healthier, and that's very much related to reality.
Okay, Bryan, did you make your point there so I can bring you back to your original?
Yeah, go for it.
So so many good points. I can't, and you guys keep talking, I can't think them all the way through while you're talking. You started out with, I want to push back on, and so can you restate that? What do you want to push back against?
On the pushback was the idea around of energy, that the mass and energy and evolution, and that Western civilization had solutions, steam power into electric and nuclear. We had developed electric cars before we went to gasoline. And whatever the big shift was to take us away from electric, steam, and to create this whole petrodollar and bring Middle East enormous sums of wealth when they've never even built civilizations. That was one of the things I explored, and that we never should have done that. We actually totally stepped in a bear trap with that, and now we're somewhat stuck with this petrodollar type nonsense rather than other forms of electricity and energy. And then likewise would be on the food conversation. So we could get near free food, near free energy, and then what do we do with that? Well, Western civilization that pursues truth is going to build pretty damn good civilizations. Eastern that does face before truth might be able to do something with it, but these Middle Eastern societies that do gain before truth or face, they've shown over and over that they can't do anything with it because they're constantly about gain. So if you gave them free energy and free food, it still wouldn't be enough.
All right, so, but we were originally talking about Generation Z, right? All right, being
apathetic. And utopian takes the bait, right? Often to take the bait.
They take the bait every time, right? Yeah, that's the problem. So I thought you made some statement there about them. That's what in other words, you said.
Well, my statement was more that they're not necessarily wrong, and that the idea of entitlement is that we could have had this.
But Western civilization chose, Curt probably knows this, in computer science, there's a concept of the greedy algorithm. So when you have multiple paths, the path that gives you the greatest reward in the short amount of time does not necessarily lead to the greatest reward several steps down the way. When we chose petroleum, it's a high energy density source. And let alone like the battery technologies of today, the battery technologies of 100 years ago is not just simply can't compete with internal combustion engine, can't compete with gasoline in terms of energy density.
Yeah,
So
I
we
mean,
went down that
energy
route.
density of gasoline is insane, really.
We went down that route, and this fast energy, plentiful energy in the shortest amount of time possible is leading us to where we are now.
Because otherwise, the Middle East would be Africa still, right?
Well, but petroleum, you're correct for individual combustion engines, but you're not correct for large scale transit. So we were able to do subway, trolley, and some of this other stuff on electric grids, and we could move hundreds, if not thousands, of people a day, right? So the only drive for petrol came to its dramatic conclusion with the muscle cars from the 50s and the 60s. That was the height of it. And then you have the 3-day war in Israel and that whole thing, and that triggers. That's when all the Holocaust narrative comes up, is the late 60s and 70s, early 70s, because people were absolutely pissed at Israel for attacking and creating the oil embargo, which led to the destruction of the Detroit auto industry. I mean, these are all connected.
To correct this error, we need to make the next generation capable of being a manufacturing hub again. We're not that anymore. We have the ability to diversify our portfolio in manufacturing because we're reshoring manufacturing now. We don't want to give it to other people.
The benefit of manufacturing now is that 3D printing and advancement, we can actually do pretty much large scale, small scale of almost any amount, and you can get the input. So you could have kind of like regional manufacturing hubs that can pretty much print, mint, or create anything that's needed.
We have to aim the education system at filling the hole that Elon Musk just illuminated on Rogan, which is it's hard to manufacture things here. It should be easy, but it's not. It's hard.
The incentives are misaligned unless you're at the very pinnacle of manufacturing and people will pay you god amounts of money for making that stuff. Otherwise, it's going to be Japan, Germany, and China, and so on, because of the current account deficit, or rather current account surplus from those countries caused by the dollar being the reserve currency. I think we talked about this in one of the office hours.
I think Elon mentioned that it's like 33,000 to make a Tesla in China, and it's 60,000 or more in any of the other locations. So it's half the cost to build it in China.
They've been specializing for manufacturing for a long time now. We have uphill battles here in some arenas. This is one of them.
But I think, consumption is going to come to an end. Like, consumption is 70% of America's GDP, and we're fat, obese motherfuckers. It's like, it's all going to come crashing down where we just don't consume anymore. Largely that comes from a recession or depression.
The subscribe to your life model isn't going to last.
Yeah.
But it's kind of
that's the acceleration borrowing from the future, right? The subscribe to your life model, that's renting every day.
Right. But it comes back to some of the stuff I was talking about, at least trying to get to, is that when you have this underlying sense of this should be done for me, you never step into I need to do this. So we're not going to get to manufacturing while everybody thinks all these things should be done for me. Right? We're never going to get to a point where there's even a drive to get there, no matter the external incentive structure. If the frame that you exist in is this should be done for me, you're not going to step into manufacturing. You're not going to drive for manufacturing. You're not going to push for manufacturing. You're not going to try to solve that problem.
You can pull the rug for you. You can pull the rug out of those people who are doing things. The whole social services industry, the government industry of social services and education, just pull all the funding. You go, actually, nobody does this stuff for you. Figure it out.
Well, and that's because it's the push for the laws and stuff that have created this incentive structure, right? But the reason people are pushing for those laws, the reason we can do empathy in manufacturing is because of this idea that this should be done for me. As soon as you have to do it yourself, those things become burdens rather than benefits.
Yes.
Right. The green push for green energy, all this kind of stuff, those become burdens when you have to do it for yourself. But as long as you can stand in the frame of this should be done for me, I deserve this to be done for me, I deserve this to be on my behalf, then you can argue for all of those burdens as benefits.
Break the frame by pulling the rug.
Right.
Okay, so I see a problem with our messaging here.
We're listening.
It has to be a positiva. We have to stay, we need to be a positiva, do the positiva, because this is the consequence. Then we can enumerate it. We have to start out with the positiva rather than the criticism.
Yes.
We
should be talking about the solutions.
The solution, yep.
The solutions and what can come of enacting those solutions. Everybody knows the problems. Everything's too expensive and people are getting more retarded.
Well, that's what we're doing on the last day.
Yes, exactly.
You'll see in my myth matrix presentation that when I lay out all the story patterns and the over 500 movies, and then how it fits into tribes, that there's in the middle, like with the superhero and dude with the problem tails, those the I am great tribe. Then with Golden Fleece and Buddy Love, that's the we are great. And the Jews hang out in that space and try to individuate everybody else, so that we kind of run around in the I am great, but we really do need to have an identity that we hang on to, which is the we are great, and that we have more Golden Fleece tales and more Buddy Love rom-coms for our people. But what they miss out on, largely through their complaint-driven psychology, is the fifth one is life is great. And life is great. It's going to have full triumphant and institutionalized tales. And we need to kind of set our sails in the life is great. So when you're asking about via positiva, it's everything that we figured out in the science of the social science, the work that we've done to be correspondent to reality and natural law. That's what makes life great. And the feminine cognition, Jewish mind, all the undermining, subversive type of stuff, they don't get that life really is wired to be great. It's wired to be reciprocal. It's wired to be meritocratic. And that's why they can't put their sails in the life is great. And that's what I'm going to be presenting, is that we need to create more of an identity around we are great and get our energy and our narrative from this via positiva that life is great. And Curt, largely through your work, has helped really, disambiguate, serialize, and operationalize what is great about life. So keep it up, bud.
I think
kind of a community effort, the way I look at it, because if it wasn't for everybody else, both in this channel and elsewhere, I probably would have turned into one of those little pools of green muck and melted away from stress of the work.
So you already get we are great. You get the we are great, at least the early stages.
Mm-hmm.
I think the positive
telling everybody
is
that
to
we
build
are
a virtuous culture,
Yeah.
virtuous civilization.
Sorry,
The
Francis.
I was going to say the positiva is to build a virtuous civilization.
It's not individualized enough, though. What's the benefit to me of living in a virtuous civilization?
That you
If
also
it means giving up all my fun things. My fun
Some
distractions.
people are really after fun, or they're actually after a version of virtue, and they're just mistaken fun as being virtuous.
Depends on whether they're children or not.
Well, I have fun as a very high value, but that being said, I don't impose costs on others, and you can rattle through the 5 of reciprocity so that it's scalable fun. It's not at anybody's expense.
Yeah, I was just going to say there are many fun things that become inaccessible when we go for the greedy algorithm for short-term fun.
Sure.
The
Well,
difference
that comes
between fun
back
and
to
joy.
well, you have infinite games or finite games, and finite games are fun at the expense of others, and eventually they'll stop. And then infinite games would have a degree of fun that are scalable and can presumably go on forever.
Infinite gains are a false promise of freedom from scarcity.
Well, that's what my pushback is. I'm telling you that if you do early electricity, radiant, Nikola Tesla, nuclear, like that's pretty damn close to infinite energy, especially in comparison to petroleum, wind, solar, all this other stuff. It is near infinite.
The problem
And
is,
if you
the problem is,
use thorium salt nuclear, then you don't have the radioactive waste nor the weapons grade that you get out of plutonium and uranium. So that's there.
I don't think anybody argues that. I think, as far as I know, the only problem that wind can't do much. Turns out it's not very good, but solar can. The problem with solar is storage and transmission, because people aren't where the sunshine is. They're where the rain is, and so as far as I know, the problem that has to be solved to bring about what you're talking about, which I agree with, is that we have to have the ability to store it and transmit it. And right now, we're just not that good at it. I mean, I remember back in the 60s, I can't remember what novel it was, but the author said it's something to do with a Mustang. He says that there are only 2 problems left for mankind, he said, that are serious. And one of them is a battery with the energy density of gasoline. And if we could get a battery with the energy density of gasoline, and that wouldn't like light on fire and turn us into little puddles of goo, then we would solve that problem. And I think that's the technological block, because the solar radiation in the desert areas is fucking insane.
Wasn't it something like the amount of solar energy fall on a 1 square mile area is enough to power all of mankind for the year or something?
I don't know the exact number, but I think Elon has figured this out, and he's quoted often, but it's far less than you'd expect if we captured that solar radiation. The thing is, go ahead.
I want to get there, and I believe we will get there, right? And what I'm trying to do is anticipate getting there, because if we got there today, we wouldn't survive, right? Because we believe that removing adaptive pressures leaves us with bliss. That's not the case, though. Removing adaptive pressures leaves us with entropy. We haven't figured out all the proxies for those adaptive pressures yet.
Wait a minute.
That's what we need to do in order to get there.
Wait a minute. Hold on. There are two issues here. I don't think we want to conflate them. Adaptive pressures. In other words, first, all evolution consists of increases in energy. All prosperity consists of increases in consumption and transformation, production, conversion, and consumption of energy per capita. We're really wealthier just because of energy. So if we look at that number, does that change adaptive pressures? Well, no, because we are losing our need for physical stress to capture and transform energy. but there's no need that we need to, there's no reason we need to be insulated from, I see what you're doing. There's no need to be insulated from the things that are necessary for preservation of our physical, emotional, mental states at given the place we are in our evolution, which is, what does it say? Humans are Paleolithic, our culture is medieval, and our technology is modern, or something like that.
Yeah.
So that because of that, we have to maintain the physical body at the Paleolithic level,
Right.
the culture at the medieval level, which is because that's about as complex as humans can get, it turns out. And then we have to maintain, continue to evolve technology without degrading the previous two. I think that's probably the way I would say what, I'm not seeing your faces. Hold on a second. What Luke is getting at. I'm trying to find some way to say it that overcomes Luke's objection to people thinking he means we need to go back and live on the farm. I'm trying to move it up to an abstraction that's a general.
Well, the way I described it is we need to integrate, not regress. We need to integrate those factors into our technological progress. We have to continue to create proxies.
Yes. Yeah. You just think of it as you have to learn in a hierarchy, right? We learn ethics in a hierarchy. We learn history in a hierarchy. We learn behavior in a hierarchy. You have to have steps to climb, and we have to have a Paleolithic body, right? A medieval society, and a modern technological economy. And I think that's a great way of saying, are you adapted for all three? Are you pro-social enough to live in a village, right? Are you physically fit enough to be a hunter-gatherer? And are you knowledgeable enough to be to participate in the modern economy? I mean, that's a pretty simple breakdown of the real problem.
And I think we've nailed it on the physical fitness side. People just don't perceive their emotional capacity and their psychological capacity and their perceptual capacity as part of that physical fitness at the Paleolithic level. But all of those systems are adapted.
Well, I mean, it's like, I mean, my wife was a runner, right? Was like, not because she's dead, but because she's not my wife any longer. But she's a runner, right? And so she'd go out and run. But the thing is, she also played team sports.
Right.
And the thing is, if you don't play team sports, you don't get it. Right? It's the get it is I can't win by myself. It takes all of us. Right, and so therefore I got to do my duty and my role on this team. So so maybe you're right. There's a stage between. It's not just physical fitness. It's not just social fitness. There's the stage in between, which we have to be able to work together and under adversarial circumstances for the good of all. Without having any parasites, which means people that drag the team down. Right. So, I mean, there's that one too. I think I would agree with that. Anyway, I'm just trying to find a way. I'm listening to you guys and I'm thinking, okay, especially I'm listening to Luke. I don't know why I would listen to Luke. God forbid.
I think of it. I think of it as a pyramid, right?
What?
So I think of it as a pyramid. You have the foundations, you have the middle layers, and you have the pinnacle. So let's say the technology and the human accomplishment are at the pinnacle. And then the physical fitness and humans, our Paleolithic body, are really at the foundation.
Mm-hmm.
Just because that we need to maintain this pinnacle doesn't mean that we can get rid of this foundation. If anything, this whole system is built on top of the foundation. Doesn't mean that we have to take everything layer by layer so that we only have the foundation, that we have to regress to the Paleolithic era. It just means that if we don't have that solid foundation, the whole system is going to crash down.
Right. Yeah. That's why all the great thinkers over time have presented it as a pyramid. Whether we're talking Plato or Aristotle or Maslow's hierarchy, all of those things are all in that pyramid, right? And that's why the middle of it is all the social stuff. You have to address the lower forms before you can resolve the higher forms. I mean, it's not.
You have to create the pyramid and maintain the pyramid.
Right.
Always. You can't, there's no escape from
Right.
maintaining the physical, cooperative,
Correct.
social,
And until our technology has gotten to a certain point that we become, I don't know, digitized or something, in which case I guess we're no longer human, and then there's a different operating system at work. And I think that analogy, pyramid analogy, is also what we tell the elites. You think that you at the top, you can insulate yourself from everything else. So when the foundation crumbles away, that you can just be, survive by yourself. That's actually not how it works. If the foundation erodes away, you at the top are also going to fall down.
Well, speaking of elites, I mean, one of my goals for this convention is hopefully we'll find some more good elites, some new nobles, those that are willing to start funding us as a think tank, as a group, and I want them to step forward in support that acknowledges that we have good solutions rather than whoever's funding all these enemy solutions that's tearing down Western civilization. I think sometimes I get frustrated to think, where are all the good guys at? It's got to be a lot more than us. And those maybe rich aristocratic families that were attacked and their monarchies destroyed over the past couple hundred of years, aren't they pissed off? Don't they want to get involved in something that?
I think they're banking
by the way,
on
we have
the Atlas
we have
structure.
at least one monarchy on board. I'm not going to tell you any more, but we do have one monarchy on board.
I think
All right,
elites are banking on the Atlas Shrugged scenario, right? That they can just go into some mountain, let the world burn down around them, and come back and reseed the world or something.
Yeah, but the bad elites have the same strategy. So are they ever going to face off with their enemies, or are they going to be cowards?
We have to bring people, think of it as a radius of risk, right? Some of us have a radius of risk out here, and some have here, and some have a little tiny radius, right? You have to bring the work you're doing, the successes you provide within the range of risk of those people, and then they'll do it. But it's like you can't ask them to bet it all on a 60% solution. They've got to be above 80% certainty before they're gonna throw in with you.
I don't know. I mean, that wasn't the strategy of the bankers. Bankers funded both sides of the war. They didn't care.
Yeah, but we're not bankers. We don't have money to throw around, right?
Well, that's why I'm saying I'd like to see if there's any good bankers that are out there. They're kind of. There
are people that if we make even a little bit of noise, that we will get access to. Before we had our flame out, I had in Richmond, I had people from the fucking Vatican Bank talking to us. Right. So there are people who want to throw money behind people who have answers. Right. And all we have to do is make it so that we look viable. And we know what it's going to be. We got to keep putting on these goddamn events. We got to publish the shit. And we have to conduct some lawsuits. If we do those three things, we're gonna make enough noise that the people with big money will throw money behind it. Now, and if you look,
isn't there a German group that's like aristocratic Reformation something in Germany that was somewhat in the news like the last 6 months or so?
A German group.
I remember that, the name.
Yeah. So, anyway,
March of Germany's monarchists. About 10% of Germans support the restoration of royals. Among those 34 and under, it's nearly 1 in 5. Ooh, that's good.
Well, I'm sure there'll be quite a few here. Like my mom is a
Yeah.
monarchist.
Oh yeah, right on.
Oh, this is beautiful.
While you're looking that up, I want to just touch back real quick on the pyramid thing, because there's a way I visualize it in my head that might be helpful for people, right? So the pyramid is
like
that,
you're like the Egyptians with lots of slaves?
yeah,
You
yes,
got a
yeah.
whip and they're obeying
Yep.
your orders. Is that what you mean? No, not
Well,
like that.
it gets the pyramid set up real quick. But the pyramid is the structure of reality, right? We recognize that. But the way I see it is that the conservatives, they think we can exist as a diamond, right? So the pyramid is the physical, the social, and the technological, right at the top, right? They think we can exist as a diamond, where the healthy social section, it can support everything that we need to support, right? Whereas the progressives think that we can exist as an inverted pyramid. Whereas if we keep moving forward into, having all of our needs met all the time in all ways, we can ignore more of the social and all of the physical, right? And so that's kind of how I visualize those
That's really
distinctions.
smart.
Yeah.
You said something smart again today. That's worth a couple of pictures. A couple of pictures that'd stick. No, seriously, I'm not even. I mean, I like to fuck with you, Luke, but I mean, I'm not fucking with you right now. That was really smart. It does happen, right?
From time to time.
There's a number of examples of technology certainly breaking away and helping free humans, but it's not a long-term solution. So some other pressure comes up, including obesity.
Well, and we can survive. We've demonstrated we can survive our separation from nature. We can't, but dysfunctions will emerge over time.
Yeah.
They'll get worse and worse and worse until they undermine the very thing that we've accomplished, right? And so it's if we want to move forward without the emergence of worsening dysfunctions, we have to start integrating those pressures into our advancement.
Well, most people would just say, wouldn't most people say, yeah, great, I agree, but I go ahead and take care of it, but I don't want to.
Right.
I don't want to have to think.
And most people don't want to go to the gym.
Right. So can I?
You get the pressure or the dysfunction. Those are your choices.
Can I?
And then when we start talking that it involves also selection pressures, and
Right.
then many of them are unfit.
Right. I mean, Japan's dealing with that too, right? They have demographic pressures where they have a large elder class and they haven't reproduced, so they don't have nearly enough. They have to rely on robots and what have you. So that's kind of where that worshipping technology gets you.
It is working for them, however. I just want to note that the combination of offshoring more labor and onshoring robots, it turns to be, looks like it's having, there looks like there's an end to the Japanese stagnation on the horizon from what I've seen lately. I'm watching Brian's face here, trying to figure out.
Not if they don't start making more Japanese people, then they stagnate themselves out of existence.
That's true.
So.
That's true. So my view is there's 100 million. There's 100 million extra people in the United States. The problem is which 100 million are we talking about? All right. So can I ask two questions that are directed, that are along the same lines of how do we make a positiva like the pyramid, that you need to maintain these three things? How do we make that positiva out of A, we're dangerous, and B, it's largely women?
We get everyone in our sphere as successful as possible, and then we tell everybody that wants to engage with us no until they're willing to do that.
Well, I agree with that part. What I'm saying is, if we're being called a dangerous organization, which is, I'm like, you mean truth and reciprocity and self-determination and fixing the economy so that people can have families again, and that they're no longer being preyed upon by various sectors and an overburdened false elite class? You mean that's somehow threatening to the population? I mean, I don't understand why that word dangerous. It's like being dangerous to criminals.
At this point.
Say again?
It is dangerous to a large segment of the population at this point.
We're extraordinarily dangerous to their comfortable illusion.
All right, so but we've got to handle the objection, right? I mean, the objection is we have to say, I mean, I don't know what is it that's dangerous about doing that much good? Is anybody trying to do as much good as we are? No. Is anybody even close? No. There's some point solutions out there, but there's no systemic solution to the problem.
Most of the world would call us suckers for trying to do the good we're trying to do.
Yes, exactly. So the second
We
thing,
recognize the vulnerabilities and we're not exploiting it. We're trying to close the vulnerabilities.
right? Exactly. So who are the dangerous people? The people who are dangerous. The people who exploit those vulnerabilities.
Right.
They're the ones who are calling us dangerous.
They're the ones that are calling us dangerous. That's actually
Because to them, we are.
well, we are to them, right?
Yeah, but
And
they are
so that's
liars, cheaters, thieves, and murderers.
so if we're dangerous to the criminals, that's a good thing, right?
That's the way that I see it.
If you're not a criminal, then we're not dangerous. We're working on your interest.
We make your reality less dangerous.
Yes. So the second one,
We can get people everything that they want without them needing to become criminal to get there.
yes, yes.
The great sales pitch.
It really is fucking great. I mean, I'm usually saying, Brandon and Bryan, I'm trying to get marketing messages out of. When I start getting them out of Luke, I'm getting scared. There's something right.
That's a bad day right there.
Yeah, but it really is a great message, isn't it?
How are all three of us better than all the other marketers?
Truth. You know why? Is if you read the best book on advertising, the best advertising is the truth is spoken succinctly and elegantly. That's what it's so how did you just say it? How did you just say it?
We could get them all of the things they want, all the things they value, without them needing to become criminals to get there.
To do it, yes, to do it. Okay, so we have
the second thing.
Because if you do, we will pursue you.
yes, we will find you, and we will not stop. Next thing is the two hard sells. One is the responsibility. I mean, what you guys were saying earlier is distancing from reality. It can be reduced to distancing from responsibility.
You cannot sell responsibility, you have to sell rewards of responsibility.
That's right. Right. So but you can criminalize irresponsibility.
No.
You can make responsibility fun by making it social, pro-social. Right? I mean, that's why it works, right? It's why church works. It's why sports work. It's why work environments work. It's certainly why guilds work. It's why the military works. Is that if you can make responsibility a shared social experience, it'll grow. So why are we making irresponsibility the central purpose of education?
Because it creates excellent clients for the regime.
Yeah, exactly. Yes. Okay, the second thing is, well, the problem is just women.
Well, the problem is just women not having children,
Yes.
which only they can do. So you can sell that to them however they want, but we're stuck with them making them until we figure something out.
And they're expected to do things that they're terrible at. Like
Right.
voting.
All right. So
And rewarded for doing things that they're terrible at.
So you know, the way we have to find a way of saying it. Well, if you don't want to handle that responsibility for society, what responsibility for society should men give? Should men give you and give up in trade? I mean, what do? We pay almost all the taxes. We make everything work.
Like there wouldn't be jobs for them. Kindergarten teacher, nurse, and so on. Those are all female-dominated jobs that men have no business doing. That's places, plenty of places in the economy.
Well, I was more of the job the problem is this need for full-time jobs.
Tell them
Right.
it's expensive to have them work.
Well,
Too expensive to have you work.
it's true. It is too expensive to have them work.
I don't know.
Well,
That's just the economic.
I outright propose penalties for any schools or jobs that keep productive women out of having kids and mothering them.
I like the Phyllis Schlafly model. She's like the ideal form of Western female. So
What did she say?
well, she had like 8 kids, raised them, was a stay-at-home mom, raised them, took care of them, whatever. And then when the youngest got to like high school, she became a constitutional lawyer and fought some of the major constitutional law cases. But she didn't start that career until she was done with her career as mother.
Yeah.
And then she brought all of the things that she learned and discovered and developed as a mother into that career. It could approach the law from the perspective of this is how you maintain a society that ensures the survival of my children. She brought that frame with her to her profession. She didn't, enter the frame of how do I extract as much as I can? How do I consume as much as I can here? She brought how do I preserve as much as I can for my children with her into her law career. So
if we do the right thing, it's going to squeeze women out of the workforce anyway by moving back towards manufacturing and so on. If we're to fix the other problems, work for women will get more scarce. And that's without mentioning AI taking most of the jobs that require you to talk to someone or fire off an email or something like that, secretarial work.
It's I'm just noticing it because I can tell when it's computer generated, right? I can tell when it's and so I'm just noticing all the marketing shit responses, all the replies I'm getting, all the customer service stuff I'm getting is fucking I mean, it's generated, and all they're doing is handing it my goddamn complaint and sending it back to me. I won't mention the company, but I have a very fancy piece of audio equipment that apparently there's a surge here. So apparently it was a surge. I lost both my fancy audio equipment and my television from the power surge. Yeah, it's my fault. I didn't put a fucking surge protector on it. Fuck me. It's my fault, right? But this fancy equipment is 10 years old, and they don't make the fucking motherboard for it. So the number of the parts cost about $2 if you're willing to find them and then unsolder the old ones and solder the new ones back on. And if you've got an ohm meter and you can measure a capacitor and whatever other crap, right? I don't have that crap around anymore, right? But you can't. It used to be you go to the local electronic fix-it shop and they go take care of that stuff, right? I mean, right? You can still do that in London, by the way. I mean, which is an interesting thing is London. You can still take your broken electronics to shops in London or UK, and they'll fix them. But it's almost impossible here. So I'm dealing with these freaking guys, and it's like 2 a.m. in the UK when I'm sending this message out, and I get the response back like 15 minutes later, and I'm like, this is a fucking AI generated response. And it was I thought it was fucking hysterical with British English and everything. It was hysterical.
Well, the best part is people in those roles are celebrating how much easier it's making their jobs and not recognizing the threat to their jobs.
Well, they may, I think what they're seeing is I can do more work with less stress. It doesn't mean I'm going to lose my job. The thing is, the AIs are effing stupid right now, and from what I can tell, they're starting to hit the plateau already. So they may not get a lot smarter. In the sense they may get better, but not smarter in the sense that they're not. The logical deduction is still way the fuck far away, right? And so, like I had one hallucinate. I asked a pretty serious question the other day, and ChatGPT hallucinated an answer that I was like, "That's fucking impossible." but it sounded really believable, right? I mean, the percentage was 72%, and I'm like, it's not 72%, it's at least 98%.
I've tried to use ChatGPT to substitute the SDK, and so I don't have to go read the documentation, and it made a very convincing sounding code that does not work.
Yes. So it's kind of dumb. I did a thing last night. I was on a meeting with Rudyard and some guys last night, and I said, tell me the meaning of propaganda in the style of Curt Doolittle. And it went out, and it gets like 80% of it right and 20% of it wrong. And it's like, I can't fucking use it if it's 20% wrong. I mean, it's got to be up there in the 95, 98% right to be able to, for something, use it. So, I agree that I believe a lot of jobs are going to eventually go away. But we have to see if they can get over this next what do you call it, level, jump in levels, plateau. We have to get over this next plateau before it's really gonna cut into jobs.
They need social science.
Okay. Well, here, I'll tell you, the mechanic, I mean, Brad will understand. It's a very simple, I mean, fucking Luke will understand this too. It's a fucking simple problem, fucking Luke. Did I say that? Did I really say? Maybe that was just a subconscious thing, Luke. I'm just fucking with, I mean, it's because I miss you so much. I was driving back from the court yesterday, and I'm thinking, I got to call Luke just because I feel left out. And so I go, what the fuck was I just talking about?
Something about us both understanding.
No, the right. So what's happened, of course, is that they have one predictive stream, and that's what we're getting. But that's not what the brain does. It produces a fucking million predictive streams, right? And it only the ones that get enough a coherence develop become into our awareness, whether subtle or strong, and only one or two of them attract our attention, right? And so the problem is, if they're already complaining about how much memory it takes, right, to run one of these processes, and how much compute's going into it, I'm like, well, okay, great. Now what you see some of them doing is 3 or 5 predictions. What they do is they just vary the I can't remember what the variable is called, the temperature. Vary the temperature, so how accurate it is. So they move to 0, and then -1, 1, -2, 2, right? So they just vary this temperature, and they get a stream of predictions. But theoretically, what you next need to do is take that stream of predictions and make 5 from each of them, and make 5 from each of them, until what's happening is the predictions converge on some set, right? Do you know how much memory that's going to take? That's insane. And we have the wrong kind of computers for it. So what you see them doing is them trying to do this now to get from one predictive stream, which is why it hallucinates and does crazy shit and tells Francis that this code is going to work and it doesn't, or tells me that propaganda means something I would never fucking say in a million years, right? And I just don't think it's there that. But when it gets there, then most of these jobs are going to be irrelevant. Because what do most jobs consist of, these customer service jobs? Looking shit up and responding. And once the AI can do that, what's the point of having overseas workforce in India? Hell, what's the point of having them now?
All right, so if we're getting towards an outcome where there's less jobs, then we certainly don't need 2 jobs to have a house or a home.
Yep.
And it seems like what you were suggesting, that a lot of our efforts are to reduce seduction and force, and to direct people toward, or more incentives towards, productive reciprocal trade. So if that comes up, then obviously we have to clean up our economics, monetary system, all the other reforms that we've talked about. And a big thing that's kind of brewing in the back of my mind is around, we do the GDP, right? The gross domestic product, which is a measure of US's productivity, which is the amount of widgets we make times the price of the dollar. So as the dollar is going up, then that can make our GDP seem higher, or we make more widgets and it makes it higher. But neither of those talk about the gross domestic reproductivity. So if
Right.
men are productive and women are reproductive, we actually left out half of our population, as if their input doesn't matter. And so I think that could be either House of Women, if we wanted to talk about that and put some of these fair trades on the table. I think that could be something we could do. I like finishing this conversation towards that stage of saying life is great. We want to have via positivas. We want to have some encouragement towards where are we headed. I think this productive reciprocal trade and the conversations around reproductivity. And I'll just finish that women being consensus and wanting to have irresponsibility and some of the other things until they have some number of children, which gets them to their cognitive load, and they do take on some degree of responsibility for their children to a certain age. We know where and when and how women will be responsible. So encouraging and aligning incentives so that they can be in that state and experience that so that they can, reproduce it, encourage it. Women, again, with consensus building, they have concerns like, do we live around parents? Is anybody going to help me raise these children? What is their school going to be like? Are they going to have friends? There's so many additional variables that women are looking at. And in today's society, the math doesn't work for them to have children.
Right.
They don't want to have children. They're not close enough to the parents. The guy that they married, his parents aren't close or live. The whole thing of around in-laws, favorable in-laws. Then you have politics that gets into the situation and can confound things, So I think one of the challenges and why I've leaned more in towards this cousin confederacy, which hopefully we can figure out with AI, phenotype matching and that type of stuff, can give somewhat atomized people an opportunity to tap into what could be like a larger decentralized autonomous organization that can help them make aristocratic, meritocratic, big life choices and help make like arranged partnerships of good genetic eugenic matches. Because I've also said, if we are not consciously eugenic, we're going to be unconsciously dysgenic. So part of the solution, the via positiva, as you're saying, what do we do about the women problem? I hope I've answered or pointed towards that. And we're going to potentially have less work to do anyway. Well, Curt, you know that a lot of our efforts is to build, reproduce, build, maintain, and protect the commons. And that includes genetic commons. So I think especially for women is to make sure that is of equal weight and importance in our efforts is to rebuild the genetic commons and to build, protect, maintain our political, social, economic commons.
You threw out. I mean, I was trying to keep track in my head with my formally of all the fucking points you made there, so that I could try to read a narrative, and I lost it halfway through because it was impossible. So I'll start with the initial premise that you suggested, and as if, I mean, we're all, most of us, businessmen here of one stripe or another. I'm sure that Martin is running, a couple of strip clubs, a bunch of call girls, and whatever, because that's what you do over there in Eastern Europe, I guess. No, Martin, you were in the manufacturing business, basically, right? Weren't you?
Yeah, but at the bottom of it.
Well, I mean, I heard that you like being on the bottom. That's what I heard. Anyway. I got one. And I never get one on Martin, ever.
I enjoy it while it lasts.
So think about it this. You know what the difference is between an income statement and a balance sheet? Right? An income statement is telling you is how much money you made or lost, right? But it doesn't tell you the change in your capital. Right? It doesn't tell you the state of your capital. So it's like, yes, I'm making $5 and I'm spending $5 and whatever, but you don't realize the secondary costs to capital, right? So what Bryan is saying, and what we've said all along, is that we have to measure what we originally called property in toto. We end up calling capital in toto, right? Or we would call demonstrated interests, which is the list of the capital by what that a poly depends upon, and that means genetic, demographic, built capital, behavioral capital, knowledge capital, institutional capital, economic capital, resource capital. It requires we track all those things. So the reason they can get away with all this stuff is because we actually are losing money every month, despite what the GDP shows us. We're actually burning through capital. So it'd be like saying, well, I have all this grain in the barn, right? And I'm every month it's taken me all this grain to feed all these cattle, and I'm only measuring the profit and loss of my purchase and sale of cattle. I'm not counting the feed. So that's what's happening at the civilizational level. It's why the high trust. The second thing you brought up, I can't believe I can remember. There's so many fucking points you made. The second is that starting on women is that social capital matters more to some people and less to others, and knowledge capital means more to, like us, means more to some than others, right? So what happens with this? How do we say it? How did you bring it up? Is that the commons? The thing is, we've emphasized individualism, and it's false. We emphasize individual responsibility and individual agency because it produces the most commons, which reduce the costs of everything for everyone. And that it seems to be extremely difficult to get people to understand. I don't know why, but if you live in Juarez and there's fucking bars on your windows, right? On everything, and you have to have metal sheets to cover everything. And I don't know why we fucking pick Rio, for example. Rio's one of the amazingly criminal places, right? And so you live on that. What is the cost to you? Well, sure, you have to defend your stuff, right? You have to put the bars on the window and all this stuff, but the real cost to you is all the things you can't have because there's no trust. It's a low trust polity. And it's impossible to build commons because anything that isn't nailed down gets stolen. Whereas, why can we have parks and commons and beautiful things in the West, and as long as there are no liberals around, they don't get damaged. So the mistake we make is that if you make a peaceful society that people harmoniously get in, but they still have freedom of individual expression and rights, what's happening is the cost of everything is actually going down. Now we see this only in the capitalist side of the producing high trust commons so that lots of people can organize capital in things that we call investments or corporations. What happens is the price of goods comes down. Who benefited more from the Industrial Revolution? The people at the bottom or the people at the top? The people at the bottom. So that's the second issue, is that our strength is not based on individualism. It's based on the use of the individual autonomy to cooperate to maximize the returns in the production of commons that no other population can produce. So how do you measure that, Bryan? Right? I mean, how do we measure that behavioral capital? Because it's how valuable is a high trust society? How do we can measure it now because we have low trust societies. So how do we measure the difference between trust? You can go with GDP figures and IQ figures. And with those two numbers, you get IQ and GDP and you get trust. You know what it is? You find out it's going to be those things are in concert. You need smarter people, which is the genetic argument you need, to have people who are more trustworthy because they're less subject to being victims and error and ignorance and bias and deceit. And they produce higher trust, which means they can produce more commons. So why is it that Europeans can produce higher trust commons than anybody else? Because of those three numbers. So if you don't measure those numbers, then you're not measuring what you want, and therefore you're not going to get what you measure. Or how's the other way around? You get what you measure, and if you don't measure it, you're not going to get it. The third thing you mentioned, I actually got it. The third thing you mentioned is that what makes men happy in the world is not necessarily what makes women happy. And I think I wish Brandon could. I wish I could recite what Brandon told me about this, but the truth is that the women, it's not the work that matters; it's the socialization that the work provides that matters. Does that make sense? And so that's why you see women gravitate towards jobs that are more empathetic and social and communicative, because it's not, men want the capital to be, right? But and men want the coordination with others to produce a loyalty structure that can compete against other loyalty structures. But women, they just want they want to get wins with other women. And so what happened was, we used to have, most people had a household with more than one generation in it, where the women shared the burden of child rearing, and the women all worked together, and the men left to work. Men worked together and women worked together. And so women had a positive social structure in which the generations themselves, as well as other women in the region, kept each other in line by social pressure. Because that's what women need. They need internal regulation. They need external regulation, and men, we develop internal regulation. Why? Because we're fucking dangerous. It's dangerous to us to not self-regulate. Women need external regulation. So what you're saying is, Bryan, is that we need to find a way to incorporate women in the workforce that gives them what they need, but allows them to be moms. Because, right? And we know how to do that. Do we really, Peterson's notorious for his speech on what happens to really the best high-powered female attorneys at the best firms. They leave. Because it's, at the end, once they've reached the pinnacle of their career, it's like, I don't want a family. So the same, you reach the same problem of, I meet women all the time. Again, I'm trying to explore I'm living as the other half lives. In rural, semi-rural America. It's not exactly suburban. And I'm talking to these women, and they're like, no, I want to have kids. I can't afford them. That's really the answer. That's all the answer is. And then the third piece you brought, I can't even remember the fourth piece. The fourth thing you brought about was the fact that you need intergenerational families who stay in relative proximity. Look at Brandon and his fucking Italians. I mean, they're notorious for this shit. Matter of fact, they're best at it. I get to pick on Italians because I live in an Italian town, right? So, and I went to school, private Catholic boys' school, where half of the guys are Italian, and so. And besides the fact Italians give you so much material to work with, so I mean, it's just good. I fucking try to get it. He just lets it go. Anyway, so what you want is that in Europe, people are more provincial. We think it's funny. We think of them being more urbanite. They're not. They're more provincial. Most people in Europe stay within range of their families. The problem with the United States is we've spent too much time bringing people to capital instead of capital to people. And that's no longer necessary anymore. And so we need to bring capital to people so that we can preserve the intergenerational family. Now, as you say, well, it's slightly more expensive to do that. Great. What's the cost if we don't? We don't have intergenerational families that can support the shared raising of children, so that women can feel fulfilled both by some part-time work or whatever work, and family. So what my point is that I don't know what people hear when they listen to us, because we can't go through. We just covered 4 steps, right? 4 different problems, and people hear us and they hear our little tweeter clips or something, or my favorite one is when I say something about cognitive science and people have no idea the depth of my knowledge about cognitive science, or they have no fucking idea. They think I'm just making shit up like every other fucking idiot, right? And it's not true. The thing is, when we talk about these factors, we actually know how to solve these problems, right? We just went through them, right? But they have no idea that we know how to solve all these issues, right? And it's not even hard. The reason that the government is better, is our system of government is pretty good, is first that it's built to debate between federations, not to govern. Unfortunately, it's trying to govern and doing a bad job, right? Because it's not designed to be governed, right? To govern. It's designed to mediate disputes between states and to find shared investments between states. And so we've got a government that's totally unsuited. We have a government very suited toward a large territory of many states like Europe, each of which do their own thing and compete, but which resolve it. But we have a federal government trying to do something for everybody, which makes everybody unhappy. Right. So if we look at these things, we say, well, we can fix this problem so that everybody can be happy. And because one of the things the government can do is it can create the terms by which a market operates. Does that make sense? So there are market inefficiencies that seem inefficient on face value, but if you include the externalities, they are efficient, right? I mean, they're more efficient. Are the fact that we bring people to capital instead of capital to people, is the fact that we tax all the product proceeds that women make for redistribution? Is that efficient? Well, not if it ends up in us not having any kids. What happens if we don't have any kids? We have to bring in immigrants. What happens if we bring in immigrants? We have the cost of integration. What happens if somebody's at the same time declaring that we need multiculturalism instead of full integration? We're raising the costs of the high trust commons that makes possible all this other production of commons that makes the prices lower for everyone. So when you look at the logic of it, it seems ridiculous, right? I mean, it seems we're foolish. But we started out this conversation saying, well, how come we think about this stuff and other people don't? Well, first of all, we're interested. First of all, we can. And second of all, we can. And third, we see the freaking patterns.
Right.
Right. And other people don't. So what's our moral obligation to other people? I got to look at it differently. It doesn't matter what your children think. It matters what the moral obligation you have to your children. Well, what does it matter if the 90% of the population that can't think disagrees just because they don't understand the fact that we just laid out four points that are quite complicated? They don't need to understand. We need to be responsible. And so it's the responsible that need to govern. I don't know if I went on too long of a rant there. It was about 12 or 14 minutes.
I'm going to have to re-listen to that again to get all the points.
But I was just translating Bryan saying, well, you're right. And we actually know how to solve all those problems. And people don't know that we know how to solve all those problems. And people don't know that we've been right about this since, I don't know, Brandon, what, 219, 28, something like that. We've been right since then.
Give or take. We teach the science of choosing optimums. All other choices are suboptimum.
Oh, and the suboptimum, it sounds like it's an efficiency thing. It's actually not. It's a non-degenerative thing.
It's a persistence measure.
Right.
Luke, you didn't say anything. You let me spin, and all I got was a few expressions out of you during that entire time. And you didn't say anything. And I'm usually watching your face because I'm like, if I get a reaction out of Luke, and it's good, that's good. If it's bad, I got all like, what the hell did I just do? And then sometimes he says, well, I was just thinking about lunch.
Oh, it's good. Covered a lot of ground.
We have the answers. We just got to, it's just, there's so much democracy baked into the American mind that it's hard to say, well, we need to be responsible. And if you're not voting responsibly, then you shouldn't be voting. And even if they're voting and they're voting their opinion, maybe that's okay. But their opinion, like on things like, I don't have the money to pay for this, which is what the voting was originally for. It's right. The purpose of voting wasn't to initiate legislation. the purpose of voting in a parliament, a place where we parlay, was to accept or deny a request from the state, the monarchy, and the cabinet, and the nobility to pay a tax, to pay for something. Right? But how did we switch this around to somehow the average fucking guy is smart enough, or the average fucking single woman without children, we should really put that in there, is smart enough and morally aligned enough and has the right intuitions and instincts to via positiva demand legislation. And when the number of people who are responsible is always inferior, they're smaller, the number of people who are irresponsible. It's not logical. So how do we define responsibility? That's the issue. We just said it. It's the fucking balance sheet. That's it. You just measure everything. And then people say, well, that's interesting.
Yeah, we turned a last resort system of governance into a first provider system.
Yeah, exactly. No fucking
Yeah.
sense. And who brought up concurrency? Who said commonality and concurrency either? Who said that earlier? Was that? Who brought up concurrency?
That's something on concurrency when you had a bunch of stubborn men kind of come to the same conclusion.
Yeah, I mean,
or same decision.
Concurrency is pretty good because it allows responsibility to prevail if you have a house of responsibility. Right? That's the important part. The thing is, we've mixed the house of responsibility with the house of people who want to be irresponsible. And so what we've done is majority tyranny by accident. We've let the irresponsible people rule. And then by doing so, we've filled the bureaucracies, the academy, the bureaucracy, the media, and the people who make entertainment about this with irresponsibles. And we wonder why this freaking happened. It's determinate. We created the freaking mouse maze, and they went through it, and they came out they found the cheese. I mean, they don't have to even have a plan. I mean, not that they don't have. Martin will get all over me if I don't say up front that they had a plan, because they had a plan.
Said in another way, we've reached the other end of the inversion, where we have representation without taxation.
Yes.
We have all these interests that are getting money from this modern monetary theory and just totally pumping socialist cause, and they don't have skin in the game. They don't have sweat in the game. They're not even reproducing children. They're largely dysgenic and destructive forces, and they're getting huge budgets for them.
All right, my medical provider's calling. I'll call them back. Hey, you have new results in your pie chart. Hey, good news. All my cancer tests are coming back negative.
Right on.
All right,
we can wrap up pretty soon too.
Yeah, the thing is, you guys, wait a minute. What did I ask a minute ago?
You'd asked about concurrency.
Right, concurrency, commonality. Okay, and responsibility. Okay, so the problem is our houses of government no longer mirror the scale of responsibility. So it should be monarchy, nobility, regions, the House of Commons, which should be commerce, and the House of the People, which should be the women or whatever. Right? So that you have a hierarchy of people who are responsible, and so the minority interests of the responsible are preserved, because that's what commonality does. People want democracy because it lets the irresponsible win, the majority. People want concurrency because it lets the responsible people win. So as long as you can get the responsible people from all sections, and you don't get too many vetoes from the people who have to pay for it, it's fine. It works. The thing is, people think we live in a democracy. We live in a republic under concurrency and commonality. And the democracy is a majority rule, and concurrency is minority defense for majority rule. All right. Did I go? I ranted for 20 fucking minutes now, so I guess I can shut the fuck up now. You're all there giving me that look. Martin, you didn't say almost anything today, and I actually got one on you. Yeah, you say it again. Say enjoy it while it lasts. Go ahead, say it.
Enjoy it while it lasts.
When you get here, I'm gonna hug you. You know,
On Thursday.
You get it Thursday. Who's picking you up?
Brandon.
Okay.
Assuming they don't hold me at the airport.
They're not gonna hold you at the
Being a
airport.
terrorist or something.
Oh, so does Noah have anything to do with what's this other group that's down that got us in trouble?
He's what?
The Sovereign American Project.
Right. So
Well, I mean,
who's
he's one of the founders.
Is he?
Yeah.
Oh, so
So
that's
him,
the connection.
Matt Lawler, and I think one more person was
Nate Major.
Major, right? Officially they're the three founders.
Okay, so I didn't know that. And I'm like, what? I don't know. The only thing I know about it is that there's some connection between them and Eli and January 6th.
No, Eli was never part of that.
That
Eli,
I know, but that's what the FBI told me.
Eli went to January 6th, but he left before Trump even showed up, and it was still enough for feds to show up at his house.
Right. So that's what the FBI told me. And I'm like, okay, so this happens because this nonsense gets put together. This left-wing crazy stringer, not a real reporter, a stringer for some third-rate newspaper writes up this one. It's the only negative press we got. Everything else was positive, even from the left. And then it gets to the FBI, and then it gets to the venue. And I'm like, so this is just not, it's all nonsense. I didn't even know, I don't know anything about the Sovereign American Project other than you guys have told me that it has a website. And I didn't know he was involved in it, or I would have been.
I think it had a website. I haven't checked it for a long time. That Sun Sentinel article even quoted your name in it.
Well, I talked to her like 4 times.
Right.
I think the challenge with the Sovereign American Project after the July 4th event is that it was explicitly pro-white.
Oh, I see.
I don't. Was it?
It was explicitly pro-white, and
Okay.
it was white nationalist, white separatist in its phrasing and everything. So when I talked to the guys, I said, this is a challenge. I could see a confederacy, like we could have alignment, but I don't think that this explicit pro-white stance is going to work well in this environment, was my caution. I think there could be a time and a place for it. Obviously, what's coming as a backlash, but the milieu, the environment that we're in uses it for a target of all their derision, so that was the concern. And that's basically what happened, because from our July 4th event, we had this sting of white nationalists, especially with a guy that threw up some Roman salutes and stuff like that. That was kind of always hiding in the background. And that was kind of the golem that they were looking for there. And if they didn't look for it, they were going to make it. So that's kind of the caution with the whole thing. And but maybe there'll be a time and place if we don't get the civil, sensible, responsible solutions that can work for everybody. We'll have factions that obviously stand up for their own version of self-determination.
Yeah, I mean, we can frame it otherwise, that is what most of our supporters are, white nationalists.
Yeah, the thing is though, if our work supports any nationalist group, that's okay, because that's true. That doesn't mean we're racist.
I refuse to even accept that framing.
Yes, I agree.
Premises.
Right. And so
Right.
I'm trying to, but I want to know how to handle the objection in person when I get So my view is, our view is the truth is that people behave this way, and that we should have organized politics so that people can have the societies they want. And right, that's our view of everything. And so if your racial group and your demographics within that group want this, great. How many guys really give a shit if all the conservative blacks, right, the middle class conservative blacks want to stay around white people? I sure as hell don't. Right? If you care if male conservative, the conservative Hindus stay around, I don't. What I don't want is that's what I don't want, right? Would I prefer to live in Norway prior to 1990? Absolutely. Or Sweden prior to 1990? Absolutely. Would I prefer to live in where I did live, which is one of the whitest parts of the country? Absolutely. Why? It's because people are the least different and therefore have the highest trust. It's not, and I like that high trust. That's all. And other people experience the same. Now, the basic problem they have is the data is that if you educate people from other races next to whites, they do better, even though whites do worse. If you educate them without access to whites, they do worse. This is their fundamental and true complaint. My argument is that the kind of education that groups need is dependent upon their genetic distribution. And this just means that we gotta stop judging people who are neogenically different and mature different parts of their being at different rates should be measured by the same standard. It doesn't work that way. Most of us know the story of the research on babies. You can pick up an Asian baby and it will be pliable immediately. A white baby will be a little less pliable. A mixed baby will be quite a bit less pliable, and an African baby will be the least pliable, right? It's just how we are evolved. So if we know that the same thing happens. I was working on a piece, I'm afraid to write about it actually, which is if you look at each race as demonstrating a bias in life cycle, like from childhood, young adulthood, adulthood, and maturity, you'll actually see that the races have tendencies to behaviors by those age spans, and those age spans reflect their maturity. Now, I'm afraid to write about that because I'm like, even that, I want the data. I mean, I know it's true, but I would need to collect a lot of data before I said that out loud. But realistically, that's the case. So why are we treating people why are we not treating people equal in their wants and needs, but unequal in the means of educating and preparing them for life? Certain groups need a rigorous physical activity and to do things in groups together in order to achieve mindfulness. Other groups have less. I mean, my kid is a typical borderline autistic white kid, and he's in the 99th percentile of size when he was a little one. And so if you talk to him, if you were rude to him or to others, he might just knock you down, because his view is you need to stop that, right? Now, is this ever the Asian kids that are the problem for him? No.
Curt, how would you answer to the pushback of that access to whites is not a human right?
I would say access to the whites is a human right. I mean, if it's a trade, that's fine. But if it's not, it's a cost, it's not. I mean, access, I mean, you say whites, I mean, it's like go to Japan, all right? I mean, if that's the place most white Americans say is better, right? Because it's a high trust society, right? So but the Japanese don't want people to come in there and ruin their high trust society. So
right, and nobody makes an assumption that access to Japan is a human right.
Right, and so
I don't think it's a I don't think access to any race or any culture is a right, unless you're born in that culture, and it's essentially inherited, part of your inheritance.
I
Well,
reject the entire
Curt
notion
was-
of human rights, and it was already in that speech from Finland. It's just
Yeah.
justification.
Yeah.
This is
That
just,
you deserve something for existing instead of rights as a fate.
We're giving
Uh,
Martin, can
huge.
you bring a thumb drive with that speech, because there's something corrupt with the file up there. I can't download it.
we're giving everybody the ability to build their polities so that they can offer the rights that their people need. You can't ask for more than that. And we're not willing to give you more than that. We're not letting people free ride on us because we have more. It's not how this works. We're giving the best information we can to everyone who can use it. If you can't use it, find yourself behind someone who can.
Okay.
I have this.
Gentlemen, I have to run. So 2 reminders. So I've sent the email to all attendees. They should get it by now. I think Ernest already confirmed. And second of all, if you haven't uploaded your presentation to the drive yet, please do so. I see the presentation I only see the one from Noah there.
Well, he's probably the only one who's finished it.
He is.
Yeah, I got some tweaks to do, but I'll upload a couple versions.
I'll get the
All right. I gotta run.
projector and stuff today.
Yeah.
Have a good one, Francis.
So can I ask that question? So we're gonna have a project, so I can hook my laptop up to a projector and use that, right?
I'm going to have the hardware today, so I'll let you all know what the model number is, and I'll take a picture of where the ports are and all that, so you can go tell me if you have any objections to its usage or you need some sort of adapter that we don't have.
Is this the one you use for the cam girls?
Nope, this is the one my nonprofit just bought. It's brand new. It's not sullied by any cam girls.
Shit, I'm recording this, aren't I? Oh, Brandon doesn't have cam girls. It's just a joke we tease him about all the time. All right. All right. I really enjoyed this conversation. I hope you guys did too. Thanks for the meeting. For the audience, like, subscribe. That we really need to clip that little piece out between Bryan and I, and that's a nice 20-minute piece.
Yeah.
And Luke, I am going to make I am going to take that screenshot and put angel wings on you. I really am. Maybe a halo. I don't know if anybody believed the halo. They believe the angel wings.
Well, you're the devil, so we need an angel to balance you out.
I love you guys. Have a great day.
See you soon.
See you guys soon.